it's time. It's time to get back to it. That was a very fun first case. I'm very interested to see. It seems like it's going to be some very light retconning of the first game, right? Because it took place either. Okay, it must have took place between case 4 and case 5 in that 2-month period when nothing happened. So let's. Help if I had Steam. Chronicles, baby. At least I get to do Yunosuke as the protagonist again. No longer do I have to do my Susaka voice, like literally 24/7.
It was a ghastly tale of a winter's night. One of an invisible killer and a crime perpetrated on the pavement along Briar Road. As the victim lay at death's door, the mystery of just who had stabbed the young lady from behind had been resolved. But no sooner had my friend saved that Eastern Exchange student from his harrowing plight, then in the dim, flickering shadows of gaslight did a second bizarre crime rend the stillness of that very night. I dare say most can still recall the sensational headlines of the day. Haunted apartment of death, the condemned criminal's curse, the dread demon of coal gas. Yet, though the great detective had at once discerned the truth upon his arrival at the scene, it only proved to be the overture that announced the rising of the curtain on a most tragic play.
So, I saw that silhouette at the end, and it reminded me of the character who was just sort of there for 2 seconds in the first game. The posh English dude who had the elegance theme, who was just there for no reason whatsoever. I'm wondering if it might be linked, because we know he was around during the first. He was around during chapter 4. We never did see him during chapter 5, only during chapter 4. So he might be suspicious already, just based on the fact that he's a weirdo. If he's in this case at all, that is. My name is Ryunosuke Naruhodo. I'm a fledgling lawyer, just starting out on my journey. 6 months ago, I arrived as a visiting student of law, having made the long voyage across the sea from the Empire of Japan to here, London, England. And on the way, in quite extraordinary circumstances, I made the acquaintance of a world-famous detective. Currently, I reside in the attic of the detective's own lodgings, from where I run my legal consultancy of sorts. I've successfully defended a number of clients in Britain's highest court, the Old Bailey. 2. 2 is a number. But since a particularly grueling and unforgettable legal battle 4 months ago now. This is after chapter 5. There's no Susato? Does Susato took notes? How does the timeline fit together? Maybe it was 4 months? The number of months is based on the number of months that something can be kept in the Windybank's pawnbroker. I swear it was 2 months. I haven't returned to the courtroom. In truth, I lost my right to return. Oh, this bit is... I understand. This section is Runosuke talking to himself. He's just received the letter from Susato to check the notes. Okay, so this is 2 months after Susato has left. Susato sends a note back. Okay. And, okay, so he got disbarred after... Well, not disbarred, but, like, he wasn't allowed to return after revealing government secret, I guess. But that epic trial was just one small part of an epic tale. A tale which was now about to waken from slumber. Thanks to a letter that arrived this morning from my homeland. What's the delicious smell wafting up the stairs? It must nearly be time for breakfast. I'd better head down. Oh, I'd better go down to Mr. Sholmes' suite and say good morning to the great detective and his flatmate. I'm not sure what's going on. Video game. Drink. Oh, I've not long had dinner, so I'm kind of stuffed. Oh, Bruno, good. I was just about to call up to you. The bacon's ready. Good morning, Iris. It smells delicious as usual. Before we eat, though, I have some news. I had a surprise this morning. Psst! Not another word, Mr. Naruhodo. This could be just the obtuse thing for my pre-breakfast stagnation, repelling mental This could be just the abstruse... This could be just the abstruse thing for my pre-breakfast stagnation-repelling mental stimulation, my dear fellow. Morning to you too, Mr. Sholmes. Ah, yes, I see. So that's it. The truth is as clear to me as day. My faculties of observation have revealed it again. What's he talking about? You, Mr. Naruhodo, you have this very morning met with a surprise. Well, is that not the case? Really, my dear fellow, it barely warrants explanation. Firstly, your hair is particularly unkempt, somewhat reminiscent of a bird's nest. Secondly, you have neglected to fasten the third button on your jacket. Clearly, when considered together, these two facts point to you having been flustered this morning. I talk now. But of course, though I don't look for admiration, you understand. My hair always looks like this. I've been this way since I first met you. Oh, it has. And the button was ripped off last night, if you remember. By you. Hurley pulled your button off? Ah, yes, I recall the incident now. It was after supper, was it not? As the evening advanced, I picked up my violin and began to play the wailing notes of a haunting tune. But then, to my utter dismay, the third string snapped. Why did this have to happen? Why? No wonder then, in my vexation, I grabbed the first button I saw and ripped it from its proper place. Well, I'd like it back now, please. It's troubling me that I can't fasten my jacket. And it's troubling me that you expect me to know where it is. Somewhere thereabouts on the floor, one presumes. Helpful. What matters at the present time, my dear fellow, is simply whether or not my deduction was an error. Well, hello. Rono said it when he came in, didn't he? I had a surprise this morning. Ah, ha, 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 ha. Well, that really is a surprise. Yes, this man is the pride of the British Empire. The famous consulting detective, Mr. Herlock Sholmes. There can't be a single person in the world who doesn't know his name. Alright then, enough of this silly conversation. Come and eat this bacon before it gets cold. And I have a new herbal tea for you to try too. My latest special blend. And here we have Iris Wilson, Mr. Sholmes' lodger and companion. They spelt Yeah, they spelled Sholmes wrong. You don't put an apostrophe and an S if there's an S before it, guys. A truly exceptional young girl who's the author of a highly successful serialization here in London. Yes, The Adventures of Herlock Sholmes is published in Advanced magazine. So, Mr. Naruhodo, won't you put us out of our misery? What surprised you this fine morning? Ah, well, I received a letter from Japan. Oh, from Susie, you mean? Was it? Really? That's right, and she had some rather startling news, in fact. Ah, intriguing indeed. You must tell us all about it over breakfast. Oh yes, what fun! Oh, is this Japanese kanji script embroidered here? That's right, the name of the armband's owner. Oh, so that's how you write Naruhodo, is it? Actually, no, it's my best friend's name, not mine. It's pronounced Kazuma Asugi. I actually believe this armband in some way embodies his spirit, you see. So you have to write all those lines just for one person's name? Kanji is funny, isn't it? That's right. Never mind my feelings about my best friend. Lines I really want to talk about. Oh, so you have scale balances in Japan too, do ya? Do ya? Well, yes, but nothing like the Old Bailey's huge example. The thing about those scales is they're only ever in balance right at the start of the trial, aren't they? Otherwise, they always seem to be hanging one way or another. I've noticed that exact same thing. Not, is it? Oh, it's like tied in a bow. Ah, gravity. Now that would be modern Ace Attorney if they invented the brilliant technology, gravity in the evidence examination. Oh, take that. Take that! Oh, Mr. Sholmes, about this. Shush! Not a word, another word. Ah, yes, I see. This would be a collar, for the breed of miniature canine with a particularly long neck, and for winter use. Actually, it's the armband I always wear that symbolises my role as a penciler. Precisely! Leads us to but one conclusion. Your arm is in fact a particularly long neck of a miniature canine. I'm starting to wish I'd never shown him this now. The man's barking mad. English phrases are fun. Got the controls. Oh, they're at the bottom of the screen. Ah. I can type with my eyes shut, you know. I can believe it. And the deadline's approaching. You sound like a Gatling gun. That reminds me of a dream I had the other day. It was such a funny one. It woke me, actually. I was typing for a whole hour in the pitch black. But I didn't make a single mistake. That's incredible. But then, when it got light, I found that there wasn't any paper in the machine. Now I wonder if I'd actually been typing at all. I think you might just have fallen asleep on the job. There's so many different bottles up there on that charming little set of white shelves. Oh, do be careful, Bruno. Mustn't try the contents of any of those bottles, even if you're hungry. I wouldn't do something stupid like that. I'm not a child, you know. Well, I wish I could say the same for her, though. The other day, he polished off a full bottle of one of my alkaloids. He what? He said he was hungry. I'll be extra careful. I look forward to finding out what aroma your tea will have, Iris. I look forward to finding out what aroma your tea will have, Iris, every single day. Oh, well, I've used a different concoction of herbs from the garden every time, but it's never the same twice. You call it a concoction, it sounds more like a science experiment than something for tea time. Oh yes, that's because different blends can have very different properties. Some calm you down, some make you feel jolly, some give you energy. Today's particular blend is something quite special, so you're really in for a treat. That sounds ominous. These are different pieces of evidence from cases you've solved, aren't they, Mr. Shanks? Not quite, Mr. Naruhodo, not quite. These trinkets are a selection from cases I've solved with particular aplomb. They are souvenirs of my success. Memories, Mr. Naruhodo. Memories. Really? So tell me about the case in which the bust of Napoleon featured. I forget. Memories, he says. Wonderful, Mr. Sholmes, wonderful. Ah yes, this is where you note down ideas, isn't it? What's in the melting pot today? Blue carbuncle. Yes, it's from a case that... Yes, it's from a case of theft that Hurley sold ages ago. The theft of a precious stone. Carbuncle is another name for garnet, you see. Especially if it's cut with a rounded top. Oh, really? This garnet was blue, was it? Well, that's the thing. They're usually red. No blue garnets have ever been discovered. Oh. So who knows what the stolen gemstone actually was? That's the real mystery of the case. Is that a real reference to an actual Holmes story? Like, no. Arthur Conan Doyle wrote about a blue whatever the hell. When they don't exist. A proper Sherlock Holmes conundrum, huh? When it gets to this time of year, Londoners seem to leave their hearths alight all day long. I love it. I didn't read the date. There's something very relaxing about watching the flames flit and dance about. But a fireplace in days of summertime is a waste of space. Really, no use at all. Rather like a great detective in days of no crimes and no criminals, Hurley. Consider this. Instead of a fireplace, a frost place. That's my latest idea. An extraordinary hearth from which it emanates a cool breeze in the hot summer months. What do you think? I think if you invented such a thing, your name would go down in history. No. The principle is extremely simple. One must, of course, light a cold fire in the hearth. Yes, of course. Brilliant. Trouble is, none of the fires I build ever burn cold. How it taunts me. So, as you British say, it's a bit of a damp squid. I've never heard that phrase. Yes, the huge metal chest with the lace cloth laid on it, and used as a table for tea and coffee. Very sturdy, that's for sure, and it's firmly locked shut. That chest contains my father's detailed records of Hurley's many cases. Yes, so I've been led to believe, but personally, I've never actually seen inside. And that's the way it will stay. Those papers are a secret between Daddy and me. If you go open it uninvited, you might find yourself being bitten. What? Is there a beast inside there or something? Books, papers, scientific implements, the shelves are... Books, papers, scientific implements, these shelves are stuffed to the gunnels. Miss Susato wouldn't be able to help herself if she were here. She can't stand mess. Susie might not be able to stand mess, but she wouldn't dare touch those shelves. No, why not? Everything's in intricate balance. Hurley spends ages on it. If you were to touch even one thing, the whole lot would just come tumbling down. Daisy noticed it. Very delicate arrangement right from the outset. Make it sound like it's a meeting of great minds. But the truth is, Mr. Sholmes just needs to tidy up. Ah, yes, Mr. Sholmes' faithful musical companion. Wasn't this violin made by somebody famous? Yes, it's a Stradivarius. Though I'm afraid you'll have to save up for 100 years before you can afford one, Rono. Didn't you buy it for a song, Mr. Sholmes? I found it at a pawnbrokery among the forfeited articles. It clearly said Stradivarius on the label. What? The ignorant broker had no idea of its true value, you see, so I paid a mere 55 shillings. That's how many pounds? £2, £3, £4. £4, half a pound, and an extra shilling. Wait, how many guinea is that? So £4, 4 shillings. So it's 4 guineas, 3 shillings. Yes, I have something in return for shopping. Aleks Sholmes, bargain hunter. But it is really a Stradivarius, though. But of course, my dear fellow, it said so on the label. I think perhaps the ignorant broker had something of a turn for selling. Machine really is imposing, isn't it? I can never remember its name. Oh yeah, his 2-month period for it is up. Hurley calls it his great analytoscope. It can analyse anything at all. It doesn't really help me. What does analysing something even mean? Ah, an extremely astute question, Mr. Narrowholder. Sorry? Well, as Iris said, my machine here spits out analysis results of anything which you care to present it. How to interpret those results, that's the key. And I confess I have no idea. Clearly, I'm going to have to construct a great analytoscope to solve the problem. That might not help. That time this year was still boiling hot. Susato seems playing even though she's not here. Look at the prawns and the anemones gently swaying around in the tank. Regular cleaning, some food and fresh seawater is all they need. And some conversation, of course. It seems like a lot of effort at first. it was worth it. I'm starting to be able to tell what they're thinking. I like to think that so many people in London had aquariums like this once. When they were in vogue. You'd never expect to find sea anemones in the middle of the capital. I think I'll have to name them soon. It's Susato-san's desk. I suppose it won't get used now that she's gone back to Japan. Just have to wait here patiently for its old friend's return. I never did see what Susato-san's room looks like. I'd go in now, of course. I don't dare. They say a young maiden's private chamber is a place of bittersweet secrets. Though from the laughter I used to hear when Iris would visit, I imagine it's mainly sweet. Now, at first glance, the desk here might look as though it's in a mess. However, it's not a mess at all. Everything is exactly where I want it. But whenever Susato-san looked at it, she'd put her hands on her hips and say, "Oh dear." A way of saying that I should make it more orderly and neat. Her way of saying that I should make it a more orderly and neat mess. I miss that. Susato-san's tea set that she left there with me. I still think green tea is just too bitter though. Thank goodness for sugar and milk. The show certainly wasn't expecting the acrid taste that one time. I've never heard anyone let out a scream like that before, or seen anyone fall down the stairs quite like that either. It always brings a smile to my lips whenever I'm feeling down. The kettle was gently simmering away up there on the top of the stove as usual. It was kind of Susato-san to send that Japanese tea. Iris really likes it. For me, it's the sound of the stove and bourbon kettle I like the most, on biting winter mornings. I kind of want to know, like, what have characters been up to in this whole period? The office spade. Now that Susato-san's gone, the shovelers aren't represented to correct me. Maybe I'll have to do it myself. That's not a spade, Naruhodo-san, it's a shovel. So, what was this startling news penned by Miss Susato? Remember the case of the haunted lodgings, Mr. Sholmes? Ah, yes. It's very interesting, you know. I don't feel entirely uncertain that a case of that nature did not occur. He's totally forgotten that. Or he was just using a double negative. Anyway, in her letter, Miss Susato asked that we read over her case notes again and investigate further. Though it took place half a year ago, for what purpose? There was something that Mr. Natsume said to her, apparently. He suggested that the real reason why she was called back to Japan so suddenly might have something to do with that case of the haunted lodgings. Oh! On Mr. Natsume's return to Japan, Susato's father questioned him about the case, she says. Something Mr. Natsume said appeared to trouble Professor Mikotoba. Him to send that telegram. Oh, that case, yes. It was very strange, wasn't it? Yes. And I had compiled the whole story into a nice, neat manuscript ready for publication, too. Then earlier, he was all funny about it, remember? He
was very mean. That story must not be published, she said. Very mysteriously as well.
Really? I said that? Are you sure?
You perhaps know something about it as well, Mr. Jones. About why Miss Usato was suddenly told 4 months ago that she had to return to Japan. This is the letter that arrived from Japan this morning by international post.
Oh, how lovely! Look at Susie's beautiful writing. I wish I could read it.
Oh, the fact that it's been 4 months since Susato-san went is actually kind of perfect. Because it means... Wait. It barely lines up. It would have taken her 2 months to get from London to Japan. Say. Then she did that case, chapter 1. And then she immediately writes that letter, and that letter has to take 2 months to get to England.
Oh, how lovely! Look at Susie's beautiful writing. I wish I could read it.
And how is your judicial assistant faring, may I ask?
He's very well, thank you. In fact, according to what she's written, she actually appeared as a lawyer in the Japanese Supreme Court and won the case.
Oh, really? Oh, isn't she wonderful?
A cut above your good self, my dear. A cut above your dear self, my dear fellow.
I won cases too, you know. Apparently, Mr. Natsume appeared in the trial as a witness.
Natsume. No, I don't recall that name.
Of course you do. We helped the man twice. You know, in those 2 cases that took place on Briar Road 6 months ago.
Ah, the moustache, twitchy man with the somewhat feline eyes and moustache.
He didn't have toe moustaches early.
Oh,
The moustache, twitchy man with the somewhat feline eyes and the moustache. Yes, who could forget those 2 cases? They made a very deep impression on me. Although I must confess, the details are a little hazy now. My dear fellow, disengage in the... Although I must confess, the details are a little hazy now.
very deep impression they made on you, clearly.
It's been 4 months now since we waved Susie off at Dover.
We went all the way to Dover to wave her off. Oh yeah, of course, you've got to go to the coast. Really, I can't believe I didn't make any comment about Dover being nice.
It was such a shock, wasn't it? The way she just suddenly announced that she had to go back to Japan.
I've got to make sure I'm not insane now. I know where Dover is. Oh my god. What a fucking wow. Made it almost fall on the floor.
It was such a shock, wasn't it? The way that she suddenly announced that she had to go back to Japan.
Indeed it was, due to a telegram she received from her homeland, I believe.
That's right, telling her to return urgently.
Yes, because our father had passed away.
No. I just said he was suffering from a high fever. Well, the cause of which was unknown. He's not dead. According to this letter, that news about her father's fever was just a ruse.
A ruse? So Susie's daddy lied to her so that she'd make the voyage back home? Why would he do that?
To admit, I have absolutely no idea. She believes it's almost certainly related to the case of the haunted lodgings. Summoning her back to Japan so suddenly like that, I wonder what Miss Susato's father is hiding.
Hello, do you know what it's all about?
Ah! Well, who can say?
Oh, wait, no. What? But you said...
Please, I have engagements, my dear fellow. My calendar is surprisingly full today.
He still has his regular theme. Oh, yeah, of course he does. Every character keeps their usual theme.
Please, I have engagements, my dear fellow. My calendar is surprisingly full today. And a stringent analysis of the matter would be excessive, I feel, even if I were quite at leisure. So, man the fort in my absence, won't you, Iris?
I will, early, don't worry. See you later.
Fades and... He scuttled off rather quickly there. I think perhaps Professor Mikotoba isn't the only person hiding something here. Soseki-san was involved in 2 cases, but only one of them was forbidden from being published. By, of all people, Mr. Sholmes.
Aha! I've found him at last. At last.
Iris, are they?
The notes about the case? That's right. Susie and I compiled them together. The case of the haunted lodgings. You want to read them, Rono?
Absolutely. Thank you, Iris. I have no idea what secrets could still be hiding in the shadows of this case. Perhaps if I read over the notes again, something might come to light.
That's the spirit.
And so, Iris and I decided to read over the case notes again together. Everything from what happened to our investigation and that fierce battle in court that followed. Reliving every detail. I just need to find a clue, and I have all the time in the world. Because of course, I'm no longer allowed to practice law in the courts of Great Britain. It was 6 months ago, a mysterious incident that unfolded on the wintry streets of London. Ah, my eyes. Yeah. A young woman was found lying on the snowy pavement of Briar Road with a knife in her back. We never did speak to her or anything. Fortunately, her life was spared, but she was unconscious for several days following the incident. The fog was thick and nobody saw her attacker, but by a cruel twist of fate, a visiting Japanese student was walking behind her at the time and was duly arrested. That man was Soseki-san, and the man who effected his arrest was Mr. Sholmes. Believing in our compatriot's innocence, Susato-san and I decided to represent Soseki-san in court. And, after a grueling trial of many twists and turns, we finally managed to prove his innocence. joyful, joyous, jubilant jubilation. Was the man's reaction after the trial. His jubilant jubilation was short-lived. We received a telegram from Mr. Shones the following morning. The victim of the Briar Road stabbing has regained consciousness. Hurry to Bart's at once. So Susato-san and I summoned a hansom and headed immediately to the hospital. So, case 5 wasn't the first time Naruto visited the hospital. Bartholomew! Bartholomew. No, that name is too... Bartholomew Hospital. Wow. Thank you, Sign of 4. Finally, I understand a reference to this game. Okay, this is February.
There you are at last.
Good morning, Mr. Shones.
I think not.
Oh!
You're late. What on earth took you so long?
Your telegram only arrived at 5 o'clock, Mr. Shones, and it's a 20-minute ride to the hospital. That's right, and it's 5:30 now. 5:30 now. I think we made very good time.
The time is utterly irrelevant. The fact is, I have been waiting for what has felt like an eternity. In point of fact, I myself was awoken at 4 this morning by a telegram boy, and feeling it was somewhat unjust that I alone had been roused at such an hour, I sent one to you.
Well, thanks for that.
Anyway, you're here now, so the victim is over there. He's only just regained consciousness.
Oh my god, Aleks.
You should introduce yourselves, and I shall observe from here.
So that's the lady who was found on the snow-covered pavement with a knife in her back. Her name is... Ah, yes, here we are. Miss Green. She's an artist. Look, there's a photograph in this frame here. Oh yes, it's a picture of a young gentleman. He looks to be about the same age as Miss Green, I would say. The same hairstyle. Perhaps the young woman's special someone, do you think? Or her brother? My, Mr. Naruhodo, I didn't know you had a sense for matters of the heart. Not in the least. I sincerely said the first thing I felt. I sincerely said the first thing I thought of. This rounded wooden figure isn't the most charming, is it? Ah, I don't think that's a decoration, Mr. Naruhodo. It's an artist's mannequin, I believe, used when practicing sketching the human form in different poses. Really? It's not exactly what you'd call a typical figure for that purpose, though, is it? No, I suppose not. I confess I've never seen one quite so full-figured before. Well, if you want to draw a full-figured person, it's the right tool for the job. There are lots of bottles in that cabinet, aren't there? Do you think it's safe to keep them like that? No. Susato Mikotoba. If you were a patient here, I'm sure you would take some medicine by mistake when you are half asleep. That is a worry, but at least the cabinet has a lock, even if it's only a flimsy-looking one.
Oh, I've no doubt you managed to unlock that somehow while you were half asleep as well.
There are limits even to what I can do when I'm half asleep, you know, Mr. Sato. Ah, this looks like the patient's treatment notes. Let's see. Do not feed. What is this place? A zoo? What is this place, a zoo?
You know, I seem to remember seeing an almost identical sign in our local park.
For the pigeons, yes. This is a person. Poor woman, I hope she hasn't read this. There are all sorts of medicines in this cabinet, look. I'm not sure if it's safe leaving them in reach of everyone like this.
Yes, you're right. I can imagine that if you were peckish, you might try a whole bottle or two.
Well, at least there seems to be a little lock to secure the cabinet doors.
I don't imagine that would stop you if you're hungry. I worry that you'd break the lock.
Hunger doesn't turn me into a criminal, you know, Mr. Sato. Ah, this looks like the treatment notes for whoever's occupying the bed. Let's see. Do not permit to run around the hospital.
The patient doesn't seem to be here at the moment, so...
You'll see is probably running around the hospital then.
Oh dear, how worrying.
What's worrying is why they haven't discharged the patient yet.
Our new office, I wonder what exciting adventures await us. The workplace of the world's greatest detective. Oh, it's a dream come true. Are you sure we've asked everything we need to, Mr. Naruto? No.
This enormous machine takes up the entire desk, doesn't it? It's really very imposing.
Oh, Hurley's great analytoscope, yes. It can analyse anything at all, you know.
I've never seen anyone actually using it.
Well, it's his invention, so I don't know how to operate it.
Why don't you get it to analyse its own operation then?
Oh, Runo, you're razor sharp today, aren't you?
The Turing problem. Or the Turing... what's it? The halting problem. Because of course the halting problem hadn't been solved at this point in time. Solved, probably not the right word. Hadn't been considered.
There's all sorts on these shelves. Chemistry apparatus, books, papers, and lots of things I've never seen before. It's all heaped up so high, I can't help feeling that the whole lot is going to topple at any moment.
It looks as though it might topple, and yet it doesn't. The epitome of Mr. Sholmes' brilliance.
I don't get it. As it happens, I'm quite well practiced when it comes to stacking shelves myself. Just the other day, my shelf in the office finally gave way under the strain, though.
It looks as though you might topple, and it looks as though it might topple, and it does. Yes, the epitome of your disarray.
I really don't get it. This is Mr. Sholmes' famous violin. The one he found being sold for a song at a pawnbrokery. What's it called again? A Shodi something?
Oh yes, this wonderful instrument features in the adventures of Sherlock Sholmes. It's a world-famous Stradivarius.
Stradi what?
Stradivarius, Mr. Naruto. Scraggy, Stragivore. Are you even trying now?
We'll come back to this another time, I think. It's curious how this enormous metal chest is being used as a coffee table. Even more curious to think that Iris's father's notes about Mr. Sholmes' cases are inside it. Didn't we only find that out in case 5?
You mustn't look in there, Rono. Those notes are a secret between Daddy and me.
Mr. Sholmes isn't somehow in on the secret.
Early tends to forget, you see. Soon as he solved the case, in fact. Once when he read one of my manuscripts, we had a terrible argument about it. Never have I solved such a case, he said. He was absolutely adamant.
Sometimes I wonder if he's from another planet, don't you? I do like this fireplace. It's one of the best things I've seen since we arrived in the country, in fact. Although, I do yearn for a Japanese kotatsu. Putting your legs under a warm blanketed table is so comforting.
Do be careful, Mr. Naruhodo. Don't mistakenly put your feet into the fire, will you? You would suffer terrible burns, you know.
I worry sometimes about how Susato-san sees me. Look at all these mementos of Mr. Sholmes' past cases. You know Miss Susato's eyes still sparkle every time she lays eyes on them.
But yours don't, do they, Rono?
Well, I have read the Adventures of Herlock Sholmes now, by order of Miss Susato. But the trouble is, having seen the real thing in action, somehow the stories don't quite ring true for me.
Well, he does solve the cases in the end.
I suppose so. Perhaps there's more to the great detective than meets the eye. Always strikes me how pretty and neatly arranged this tea set is.
It's my favourite one. In fact, I think it's high time for afternoon tea. Wait there, I'll fetch the special blend that I've prepared for today.
Oh, Iris, you do love your tea, don't you? You look so happy at the prospect.
And after you've drank it, I'll collect some experimental data, if that's alright.
Just what is she about to make me drink? That's a charming little white shelf, full of charming little bottles too.
Oh yes, but don't touch any of those. They might explode.
Ah, a charming shelf, full of charming bottles, full of charming ingredients. Oh. Ah, a charming shelf full of charming bottles, full of charring ingredients. How the hell did they make this joke? Dude, Janet Sue is insane. What the hell would this joke have been in Japanese? Because this is just so perfect. I don't know.
You know, Hurley mistakenly drank from one of them the other day.
What? And how?
I think he was lucky though. He hasn't exploded yet. Chemistry can be a very hazardous occupation.
It's living with Mr. Sholmes that's the hazardous occupation, if you ask me. Ah yes, this is where you note down ideas, isn't it, Iris? So, what's on the blackboard today? Back up, Bruno. What's this?
Oh, I'm just playing around with ideas for the title of our next month's instalment. Another idea I had was the Beryl Coronet. I'm really torn about which one to use. What do you think, Bruno?
Anything but back up Bruno, obviously.
I suppose you're right. I'll tell you what, I'll surprise you with it. You'll have to wait until next month and see.
Ugh, so many sleepless nights.
If I've remembered correctly, this large and imposing lump of iron is called the typewriter.
To think that every single one of the adventures of Sherlock Holmes is blossomed from this very machine. Ah, it's such a dreamy thought.
I actually had to go on it the other day. Metal bars that move when you hit the keys got all tangled up somehow and that made Iris angry.
Mr. Naruhodo, you're ruining my dreamy thoughts. Please don't do that again.
Ugh, now I've made Susato-san angry as well.
Hopefully that will deal with my stuffy nose. Good old antihistamines.
Oh. Iris. That's incredible concentration, that is.
I find it quite remarkable how she can focus on so many different things at once.
Perhaps I should try drinking more herbal tea.
A blend third from the right would be good for you, Ronai.
Oh, Iris? This girl is destined for great things, I'm sure.
Oh, I didn't check if she'd had her 11th birthday in the first thing, or if anyone had had their birthday.
Eee! A mouse, Mr. Naruhodo. Enormous mouse.
Vermin in a hospital? That doesn't seem the best.
But it looks like a very healthy specimen, doesn't it? It's very plump.
I'm not sure. We can say that that's down to excellent. I'm not sure we can say that's down to the excellence of this facility, if that's what you were thinking.
That must be a bag of Miss Green's personal belongings.
She would have been brought directly here after she was found stabbed on the pavement, though.
I expect a friend or family member probably brought some things for her.
Alright then, let's see what's inside. A change of clothes, no doubt, and...
No, Mr. Naruhodo, you must never scrutinize a young woman's personal... No, Mr. Naruhodo, you must never scrutinize a young maiden's personal belongings.
The young maiden might have chocolates, or biscuits, or caramel. Good morning. Hello, I'm, Yunosuke Naruhodo, from the Empire of Japan.
Gotta do something different. What about female, I'm from Birmingham voice?
I'm from Birmingham? Oh no! Was it your knife that Yoda made you?
No, I'm a lawyer.
And I'm Susato Mikoroba. Pleased to meet you. no! Was it your knife then? Are you the one? No, I assure you, I'm Mr. Naruhodo's judicial assistant. We heard that you regained consciousness and wanted to come and give you our best wishes. Best wishes for me? Thank you. I'm blooming up. Best wishes for me? Thank you. I'm Olive Green. I'm an artist. I can't, okay, it's not what I wanted it to be, but this always says okay. Well, no, that's not right, is it? Well, what I mean is, I'm trying to be an artist. Neil, what I really mean is, I desperately want to be an artist. But the truth is, I don't have any talent. I know I don't. It's no wonder I was stabbed in the back.
I don't think that's related, actually.
Gosh, this young woman seems to bend over backwards to put herself down.
Seeing as we're here, we should ask her about what's happened from her perspective, I suppose. To suddenly be struck in the back by a blade as you were walking along the pavement. What a terrible experience you had, Miss Green.
It was so cold that day. And the fog was so thick I couldn't see a thing. It was 4 days ago now, I think. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I'm afraid you've been comatose all that time.
But the case has been solved, isn't it? Hasn't it? All I've been here at the hospital, I mean.
Indeed it has, my dear madam. Spectacularly, by none other than I, Aleks Sholmes.
Mr. Sholmes, as you well know, it was Mr. Naruhodo's hard work in court that solved the case. Are you yet to hear what happened, Miss Green?
Yes, I'm afraid so. The gentleman from the police force is supposed to be coming to fill me in shortly.
Oh, I see.
My coming round seems to have made everyone frantically busy. I'm so sorry. I should never have regained consciousness. It was selfish of me.
Oh no, we're all so relieved that you're on the mend, Miss Green. We are. With that kind of attitude, maybe her surname should be Blue, not Green. So, you're an artist, are you, Miss Green?
Oh no, I couldn't possibly claim that. I'm a fledgling artist at best. I mean, I'm a student of art, really. At the Thorndike Academy of Fine Arts.
Oh my, an Academy of Fine Arts! Great Britain is such a wonderful country.
Tell me, Miss Green, do you live hereabouts?
Oh no, actually, I don't deserve it, but I have a little flat on Brixton Road.
I see. How very interesting.
Wait, this will be different now that Susato said, right? I'm right in thinking that these scales are a symbol of the defense in law, aren't they? No, that are supposed to symbolize treating everything equally and fairly. That's why they're always in the middle, balanced, equal measures on both sides. Recently though, whenever I see a set of scales, I can only think of the enormous scales of justice. That's entirely understandable. They are such a powerful symbol in the courtroom, aren't they? The thing about the scales of justice is, they're always leaning one way or the other. They're only ever in balance right at the start. It must be something peculiar to the British. I'm afraid I can't shed any light on it, Mr. Naruhodo. It's a very fine embroidery here that shows the name of the armband's owner. In this case, Kazuma Asogi. I'm
always carrying my best friend's hopes and dreams with me on my arm right just here, all the time. To be honest, it's something that weighs very heavily on me. Oh, I didn't realize it was such a burden, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, I think it's why my right shoulder aches so much. Are you sure that's not to do with your reading in bed or the like? Okay. The Briar Road. She said she's on Brixton Road. Brixton Road. I swear I heard Brixton Road sometime before. There's a challenge. Can you go from left to right without the stuff showing? I can't.
I see. How very interesting.
I'm moving up. Oh no, is it?
Brixton is some 10 stops away on the underground from here. And Thorndyke Academy is a mere 3-minute walk from Brixton town centre.
Does that matter, Mr. Shones?
Perhaps not, but Briar Road is far less salubrious part of town by comparison. Dwelt in by those of inferior means, including the
Maleficent. Dude, that's the word I'm gonna have to look up.
including the Maleficent.
Oh, I didn't even check the pronunciation.
Maleficent. Including a Maleficent, Mr. Moustache.
In theory means, I suppose Soseki-san does fit the bill.
It struck me as somewhat out of the ordinary for a young fine arts student walking in such a district. That's all.
I'm Birmingham? What's this? She's suddenly clammed up. Mr. Sholmes, you should be ashamed of yourself, prying into a young maiden's private affairs.
Ah, oh dear me, do forgive me.
From Birmingham? If you don't mind. I'm being discharged shortly, so I need to pack up my things. Oh yes, of course, we won't keep you. Thank you so much, Miss Green.
Is there Mr. Narafodder, Mr. Narafodder?
Narafodder now? Well, if you're looking for Naruhodo, the lawyer, that's me, but...
Ah, Mr. Narafodder, good. This is for you. The message from Mr. Saucy Nutsmeg.
What the fuck? Saucy nutmeg. Soseki saucy nutmeg. Okay, dude. Mr. Natsume sent a message to me. But why would a policeman be delivering a message from Mr. Natsume? Exactly. What's going on? Scotland Yard Constable being playing delivery boy at this time in the morning.
Ah, what are you waiting for? Let me see that.
Oh.
Well, this is most unexpected.
Something wrong, Mr. Shones?
Something wrong, Mr. Shones, he says. Have you not seen this note? No, how could I have? It would seem that London's criminals have no intention of letting the great detective rest. A new case calls. A case of murder, no less. We must depart at once.
Murder?
Call a cab. This time is of the essence.
But the trouble is, we've yet to read Mr. Natsume's note. Thinking we ought to pay him a visit in his lodgings once we did.
That will be entirely convenient.
Convenient? What do you mean?
It's all here in the note, my dear fellows. Murder we must investigate. Took place at Mr. Moustache's lodgings.
Wait, what? I'll hail a fiacre at once. It was only yesterday that Suseki-san was in court and we were dispelling doubts about his innocence. And now, the very next day, there's a murder at the man's own address? He may very be the unluckiest man alive. So it seemed to us at the time. We were soon to discover it was worse than we thought. Ground floor. He's on the first floor. Oh, what? Is this guy the victim? What on earth? Oh my, the gentleman is deceased without question. He's dead. Local student, Mr. Narada, Squire. Mr. Natsume. Oh, why? Why is this happening? Why to me? I've only just got out of court. Yesterday, I was finally home after 2 days of misery. And then I wake up the next day to this. No early bird should catch a worm like this. Woeful worm without wiggle.
I see you're in high spirits again this morning, Mr. Moustache.
Oh, not the horrible Herlock Sholmes. Herlock Sholmes. Shove off. Show yourself the door. I never invited you. Mr. Sholmes came here with us. I'm quite sure he'll be able to help you, Mr. Natsume.
I'm entirely at your disposal, Mr. Moustache. What can I do for you?
You can leave.
Oi, hey, fish and chips, fish and chips. Here they are already, the busybodies. Ah, Inspector Gregson, what a pleasant surprise. Pleasant visit. Gives me heartburn. Every time I see your face at the crime scene shows. Ah, I deduce, Inspector, that your heartburn is as a result of your excessive consumption of fried food.
Good morning, Inspector.
This is a crime scene. Don't you go touching anything.
Or good morning to you, or good morning to you too, sunshine. No, bloody hell, Mr. Narrow Squire. He's gone missing now. She gone? I've no comment on the matter. No dialogue. Thing to see in here. It's time to leave here. Go to the crime scene you've seen now.
Maybe the bike will finally be relevant.
Why has somebody built this snowman on some sort of pedestal? Why has somebody built this snowman on some sort of pedestal, do you think?
That's not a pedestal, Mr. Naruhodo. That's part of the snowman's body.
Really? But it already has a perfectly good body.
Well, it's true that British snowmen are usually made up with 2 balls of snow. Perhaps this is a foreigner.
And now we're looking at him as if he's strange. Poor man, I know how he feels.
If anything, it's Japanese and British 2-ball snowmen that are the strange ones, isn't it? After all, real people do have 3 sections: head, torso, and legs.
Do you ever think that perhaps you think about things too much? London's blanketed and in fog again today, and the sky is covered in cloud. If you look carefully in the distance, you can just make out the Crystal Tower being built.
Ah, the Crystal Tower, yes, the centerpiece of great exhibition that's open in 6 months' time.
We're 4 months' time in the future. Wait, no, we're actually 6 months' time in the future. Because there was a 2-month gap between Case 4, aka now, and Case 5. Then there was a 2-month gap, so you started going home. Then a 2-month gap of the telegram being. It's actually been almost 6 months, so in the present, the exhibition's starting soon.
Everyone's talking about the Great Exhibition of London at the moment, it seems.
Well, it's to be the largest event of its kind anywhere in the world. Technology and scientists from all over. I can't wait for it myself.
Do you think visiting students from the Far East like us will be granted entry?
The last great exhibition that was held in London had more than 6 million visitors, it seems. This time, the British are determined to make it an even bigger success, to outdo the Paris exhibition.
I see. It's an incredible number of people. So many people expected to attend. You should easily be able to slip in unnoticed.
There's always the honest approach of buying tickets at the main entrance, Mr. Naruhodo.
The exception on the top floor, where Mr. and Mrs. Garrison live, all the windows are bricked up.
Yes, that's because of an old window tax that was charged on the number of windows a property had. In order to pay less tax, poorer members of society filled in many of their windows.
The tax has since been abolished, hasn't it? So the windows can all be opened up again, surely.
Unfortunately, it would appear that the residents of this district can't afford to pay to have the work done. Yes, that is a sad state of affairs. Especially for people like poor Mr. Natsume, who have to live all cooped up in a windowless room. I suppose that's the price you pay for living in very cheap accommodation. It all seems rather pointless when you put it like that.
What is this green thing? What I do?
There always seems to be a bicycle outside the Gardepout residence. I read that bicycles are extremely popular all over Great Britain at the moment. In fact,
That one seems very warped though, especially the front wheel. That to make it more of a challenge to ride, do you think?
no, I'm afraid that may be a result of the rider's incompetence. For the front wheel to be so badly warped, I'm afraid the rider may be similarly afflicted.
Then there's a good chance that Mr. Natsume has been practicing this bicycle, I think.
Oh dear, I fear you may be right.
Garrett household, Mr. and Mr. Natsume's lodgings are in prominent position there on the corner. Sometimes when I look at the building, I can't help feeling that it's all a bit of a slant.
It does rather look as though it would collapse in the smallest earthquake, doesn't it?
This is supposed to be haunted, and isn't it supposed to be haunted as well? I think I might have a hunch as to why Soseki-san has a hunched back.
Oi, I said hands off. You're gonna mess up my crime scene.
Oh, I just wanted to look, that's all.
No chance. I know your kind. You'll mess it up just by looking at it.
Someone's in a bad mood.
There's certainly some bad air in here, isn't there?
All right, it sounds like I'd better talk to the inspector first and try to carry some favour. We've got a card, a wooden castle face. Red carpet patch, red patch carpet. Actually quite a juxtaposition. This is this man's room? Why is such a fancy man living? What a terrible thing to have happened.
It's only been there 3 days since I was arrested of the incident on the pavement outside. And then, having finally regained my freedom, it starts happening all over again. Endless existence of excruciating experiences.
So, the victim lived here on the ground floor, and your room is just 1 story up, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. In a way, we were neighbours, I suppose.
So did you know the victim? Were you friends? What's the matter with Soseki-san now? An innocent enough question, wasn't it? Why does he seem so shaken up by it?
Well, I suppose he wasn't a complete stranger. But he didn't invite me to his room. Never. On my honour, I swear it.
What an extreme reaction.
You're probably wishing you'd never asked now, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? When we were found him here, I felt wretched, which is why I sent word asking you to come. Through that inspector over there.
So, Inspector, what was the victim's name? Who was it?
Mr. William Shakespeare. He was a lodger here. So as you can probably tell, he was an actor. Bit of a dead loss as it happens. Or just dead.
Mr. Shamspeare.
It was the landlord, old Mr. Garrison, and the other lodger, Mr. Natso, mate, who found him. The fella didn't rise at his usual hour, so Garrison got quite worried and kicked the door down.
But doesn't Mr. Garrett have a bad leg?
Oh yeah, you're right there. It was that Jerry Japanese hunchback over there who actually did the kicking.
Really? So Seki-san?
The victim was pretty hard up, it seems. Even done some time inside. Victim was pretty hard up, it seems. Even done some time inside for petty crimes. He had no money, no place to go, no friends. His only acquaintances were the people in this house. Miserable life and a miserable end to it.
So what exactly is Mr. Natsume still doing here? He's not involved in the investigation, so shouldn't you have sent him away from the crime scene?
Well, I'm not saying it's because the fella looks odd or anything, or that he acts suspicious. But I thought it would be prudent to take a statement from the culprit, cohabiter.
You nearly said culprit there, didn't you?
Oh dear, Mr. Natsume appears to be under suspicion again.
It certainly seems that way. He does come across just as... he does just come across as such an odd fellow, doesn't he?
Oh man, how unfortunate.
Anyway, I can't say much until the coroner gets here. But I don't think the fella's been a goner that long. The body's still warm.
Even if the inspector would allow it, I don't think I could bring myself to the dead body.
Ah, it's time. Let us engage in the art of deduction. The narrow
Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing?
Ah, you need only observe to know it, my dear fellow. Investigating, naturally.
There's nothing natural about that pose.
Mr. Sholmes, have you made some miraculous discovery?
Patience, my dear madam, patience. We've not been here in this room for 5 minutes. So far, all I've managed to deduce is what actually happened.
My goodness! But isn't that everything we need to know, Mr. Sholmes?
Now that you propose the idea, I believe one could indeed see it that way. At the present time, I have managed to draw 2 incontrovertible conclusions. The first, that there was a physical struggle here last night in which the victim fought for his life.
The coffee mug is tipped over, but there's nothing spilled. Something I just... or the teacup, rather. Got 2 little drawings here of characters. Locked.
Oh!
Mr. Natsume, what's wrong? Is something that Mr. Sholmes said significant somehow?
No, it's time on me. Forget I was here.
And my second conclusion is that there was a poison lingering in the air here last night that passed the victim's lips.
Nonsense.
All right, Mr. Natsume, why are you reacting so extremely to Mr. Sholmes' deductions?
No, please. Pretend I'm right here. Invisible, ineffable, inscrutable, insignificant.
impossible to ignore.
You must tell us everything, Mr. Sholmes. Spare no detail.
But of course, let the theatrical tragedy before us be unravelled by my great deductions, presented for your pleasure in 2 acts.
Heard some truly astounding great deductions from Mr. Sholmes in the past. No doubt this will be no exception. Miracles will unfold before our eyes this time.
So, my dear fellows, for your delight and wonder, let the curtain rise for Herlock Sholmes's Logic and Reasoning Spectacular, Act 1. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in this disconsolate room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate, which contains, you will observe, one half of a sizable bar of soap, meaningful, indubitably. Why is the soap set so purposefully upon the dish? Like the victim's Last Supper, in fact. Yes. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer. It appears that the young man's appetite was his undoing. Taking up arms in the form of his cutlery, the victim engaged in a deadly battle for his life. Yet the struggle against his hunger was in vain. For in the end, he couldn't resist devouring the slippery feast. London's foul soap besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison, tainted the contents of the plate. The soap and the lather about the young man's mouth are too perfectly matched to ignore. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to excessive ingestion of foul soap. Though personally, I have a greater interest in the taste of foul candle wax, of course. The cause of death identified, we proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? The audience will recall that the death occurred during the victim's Last Supper. Did the man dine and die alone? A single teacup suggests the answer. Draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. The careful criminal could have absconded with his own cup to cover his tracks. Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. Though forced open now, at the time of the incident, this door was locked. And the sole key was in the victim's pocket. In other words, when the victim consumed the poison, he must have been alone. Alone with his inferior soap, from whence wafted an inferior scent. And with that acrid aroma lingering in the air, the victim met his end in tragic solitude. And we can take comfort only in the fact that his soul was well cleansed on its way to the hereafter. Thus concludes the final act of Herlock Sholmes' great deduction. There's just one thing, Mr. Sholmes. You are disposed to identifying just one thing, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? Pray, what concerns you?
Well, no matter how hungry he was, do you really think the man would have eaten soap?
It is quite apparent that this man had barely a penny to his name. And it is a curious thing, to one so destitute, soap can suddenly appear quite irresistibly appetizing.
How extraordinary!
In truth, I have tried a little soap myself in the past.
You've eaten it, you mean?
My dear fellow, it was some time ago now. My postulation was that it would cleanse my gut.
And did it?
As I writhed in agony on the floor and spilled the contents of my stomach, yes, I believe it did. The experience taught me a valuable lesson. Soap is quite poisonous. And it has an unpleasant taste and leads to great discomfort. In summary, I cannot recommend it.
Believe me, I wouldn't eat it even if you did. There is something that troubles me as well, actually. Oh, what's that? Mr. Natsume? Oh! I couldn't help but noticing him shuddering and quivering out of the corner of my eye. Almost as if Mr. Sholmes' deduction. Such a nerve, somehow. No. Nonsense. Oh, that clenched teeth episode didn't last. I think, judging by Mr. Natsume's reaction, Grey Detective's deduction may need some gentle corrections in order to reach the actual truth. Yes, Mr. Sholmes' observations and deductions are sometimes a little too sharp. He has a tendency to hit the nail on the side of the head and drive it in at an obtuse angle. When he does that, it falls to us to straighten things out. Alright then, let's see what we can do. Yes, we must pick out the key words in Mr. Sholmes' quite brilliant deduction, and discreetly exchange them for something that makes a little more sense. We can do that. I'm sure we'll arrive at what Mr. Sholmes meant to say in the first place.
In that case, are you ready for the second performance of the day? Once again, my dear fellows, for your continued delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Sherlock Holmes's Logic and Reasoning Spectacular, Act 1. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in this disconsolate room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison. Next to the victim, notice a large dining plate, which contains, you will observe, 1/2 of a sizable bar of soap. Meaningful, indubitably. Why is this soap so purposely upon the dish? Like the victim's last supper, in fact. Yes. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer.
Well, you can't deny that the fork implies the man was eating something, or about to eat something. Yes, that's true. If I were to decide to eat some soap, I should prefer to use a fork than to attempt it with chopsticks. Of course, only half a bar of soap is left on the plate. But might there not be some other explanation? Something material that proves whether or not the man really ate some soap. Bum, 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 bum. Da-dum. You think he was drinking tea with his soap? Cup's empty, so there is no way of knowing. Ah, how about this for an idea? Perhaps the cup was full of water, and he was dissolving soap in it so that he could... something. Please remember that he may not actually have been the soap lover that he's been made out to be.
I missed the line.
I suppose you'd eat soap with a fork, would you? I don't think it's a question of which implement you'd use. You shouldn't eat soap, full stop.
Yay, British punctuation. None of that period nonsense.
It's a full stop. Then why? Why does the man have a fork in his hand? Oh dear, I understand your frustration, Mr. Naruto. Just don't take it out on me. Point is, if we decide the man used this fork to eat the soap, we wouldn't be changing Mr. Shone's deduction. So we really ought to consider some other clues.
Dun, dun, dun.
Look, there's more soap on the floor here. Mr. Shamspear must have really loved the stuff. Let's not jump to conclusions, Mr. Naruto. Look closely at the soap. You see that it would fit together perfectly with the half bar on the table. What the? How can that be? I think that they are two halves of the same bar that broke apart. Take that! Take that! Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course! The other piece of soap reveals the answer.
It's being the other half of the soap on the table. In short, the victim was not eating soap at all. But it's obvious, really. I know depths of hunger could drive any man to attempt to eat soap. Even I, with my unquenchable thirst for practical knowledge, took only a single bite.
That begs the question of how the man was poisoned, because there's no sign of any food on the table.
An excellent observation, Mr. Naruto, and one that furnishes us with the answer we seek. For London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of the plate.
Mr. Sholmes is still pushing the soap argument then. Perhaps he's suggesting the man lick the soap rather than ate it. If soap in London is that poisonous, I don't think I want to be washing my hands with it. There are no signs of any food in this room at all. Of course, food isn't the only thing that passes people's lips, is it? A fork. Victim didn't eat the soap. What did he eat? Yes, it's a real mystery, isn't it? Ah, I've got it! He wasn't interested in eating the soap at all. It's this fork he wanted to satisfy his hunger with. Mr. Naruto, I really don't think it's helpful to continue with this line of reasoning that the gentleman had peculiar tastes. You sadly sound has such a gentle way with words, but I know when I've been tipped off. The contents of the plate is just soap again, isn't it? You know there's a saying in Japanese, don't you? Your food is poison, and you might as well... if your food is poison, you might as well eat it plate and all. Well, there's an image. All I can picture now is the victim first taking a bite of the soap and then the plate. Soap like some tofu, the plate like a giant rice cracker. Here, that sounds like a very bland combination. Yes, a Western vessel for the serving of infusions of dried tea leaf. It's a teacup, Mr. Naruto, as you well know. Stop putting on airs. And it's empty. Ah, so we've already established that the victim wasn't eating soap when he died. However, it's significant evidence to suggest that he was drinking tea. My thoughts exactly. Take that! Take that! Yes, the victim's life is claimed by poison that tainted the teacup.
Indeed, cups have been the vessel of choice for practicing poisons. Indeed, cups have been the vessel of choice for practicing poisoners over the centuries. And it would appear that this victim drank every last drop.
There's no sign of food anywhere in the room.
Which leads us to the immutable conclusion. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to the ingestion of poison contained in this teacup. The cause of death identified, we proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? The audience will recall that the death occurred during the victim's Last Supper. Did the man dine and die alone? A single teacup suggests the answer.
Ah, the Western vessel for infused hot drinks again. Already featured heavily in our deduction so far. Yes, we can imagine that shortly before his death, Mr. Shamspeare was having a drink of tea. There would be nothing remarkable about that, but what troubles me is Mr. Natsume's reaction when he heard Mr. Sholmes suggest it. There's more to this deduction than it seems. We must closely examine the scene of the crime again for some more clues. It's empty, and it's the only cup on the table. It would appear so, yes. And when you consider those facts, Mr. Sholmes' reasoning seems highly logical. But it's always the same in these deductions. The real truth is always buried a little deeper than the great detective suggests. And Naruhodo, you seem very dubious of Mr. Sholmes all of a sudden. Aha. The fork again. The victim just seems to be holding it so pointedly. It makes it impossible to let go of the idea that it must be involved somehow. Well, let's hope it turns out to be a useful clue in the end. It's another Western vessel for infused... It's a teacup! And it too is empty. Given that he's actually holding this one in his hand, you can assume that this is the cup from which Mr. Shamspeare was actually drinking. But if that's the case, this changes everything. Everything we've deduced up till now is turned on its head. I have a bad feeling about this. I almost don't want to say it. Yes, I know exactly how you feel. Take that! Did the man dine and die alone? This other teacup suggests the answer. Yes, there were two teacups in this room all along. Oh. In other words, this is a strong indication that at the victim's Last Supper, there was a guest present. Mr. Fairplay, of course.
At the very least, we can say now with certainty that somebody else was in this room last night taking tea with the victim.
What are you talking about? Utterly, unbelievably, unjustly unreasonable.
To draw a conclusion on such meagre evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. which case, what more can we deduce about this possible guest at the table? Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. You mean to say you know exactly who was in this room at the time of the victim's death? Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. I'm not sure I like where this deduction is going now. I'm afraid it's too late to go back to the halcyon days of eating too much soap. The identity of the guest who was in here last night when the victim passed away is something I have a very bad feeling about. Well, you can try to ignore your feelings, but we cannot ignore the truth, Mr. Naruhodo. No, I suppose not. Time to look around again. Oh dear, the latch is most definitely broken, isn't it? The door was kicked in by Mr. Natsume, according to what Mr. Gardeb told the inspector. You knew his short, thin little legs had so much strength in them. I'm not sure the length of his legs is any way significant here. Perhaps this says more about the poor state of the door than about Mr. Natsume's strength, actually. Careful, if he overheard that remark, he'd almost certainly have a lively response. I don't know, can this broken lock really tell us anything about who was here? The pile of books is his books. It's empty. Empty of liquids, but full of air. That makes you think, doesn't it? It makes me think that you're full of hot air. You should be thinking about who else was in this room at the time. Bother, Susato-san's quip in response was cleverer than my original riddle. At first glance, it seems that the only things in this room are the makeshift stage and the costume. I overlooked these 3 books initially. I wonder what they are. Let's see, the titles read Picture of Monsieur Lecoq, Canterbury Yearnings, and A Meal for Gabriel. Wait, I'm sure I've heard those titles before. It could just be an incredible coincidence, but they are the exact same 3 books that Mr. Natsume purchased the other day. What? Yes, on the day of the unfortunate incident when the screen was stabbed. Yoseki-san had just been to a bookshop and bought them, that's right. And now those 3 titles are here in the room of the victim. Yet Mr. Natsume claims to have never been here before. What does this mean, do you think? I really don't know what to make of it. Pile of familiar books. Take that! Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is the pile of familiar books. Oh, quite so. It's no mere coincidence that these 3 titles are here in this room. It's the link to the truth.
Oh!
Mr. Natsume, you purchased these books 4 days ago at a second-hand bookshop.
That's just a coincidence.
In that case, you will be able to bring the same 3 titles from your own room, will you not? This very moment. This very moment.
Oh, never. Non-negotiable.
Can't bring your own copy, sir. It proves that these 3 books are in fact yours. Having purchased the books 4 days ago and returned to your lodgings, you were arrested the very next day. So you could conceivably have brought the books here on that evening, but you never mentioned that. In other words, you could only have brought these 3 books here, to the victim's room. Last night, having returned to your lodgings after the trial concluded at the Old Bailey. short, there is only one possible conclusion. The victim died here in his room last night as a result of poisoning.
That same night, the victim had a visitor.
And that visitor
was you, Mr. Soseki Natsume.
thus concludes the final act of Aleks Holmes's great deduction.
So as of the moment, it's either suicide or he's the killer. So, but suicide doesn't make sense. You wouldn't. That's the stupidest way to commit suicide. Like, come on, poison, really? Why would you? You know, it's like, huh? Why would you pin it on somebody? Not again! Not again! Not again! Not again!
Well then, Mr. Natsume, it would appear you're going to have to accompany me down to the yard. Again.
But wait. Hold your horses.
Yes?
Door, key, locked. Entry, exit, entirely impossible.
It's so flustered he's being even stranger than normal.
What, you think that's an alibi? You could have just made a copy.
What?
You live in the same building after all. You'd have plenty of opportunity, I'm sure.
But. Misery me.
Sorry, sir. You'll get your chance to give your side of the story later. The facts speak for themselves, Mr. Moustache.
Oh, you horrible Aleks Holmes.
He really has found himself an arch rival now, hasn't he?
Come on now, no dilly-dallying. Outside, there's a carriage waiting.
I'm student Narrowhoder, Esquire. I'd never imagined that I'd be in this position again, but you have to help me, please. I'm innocent.
All right, I understand. We'll come to your cell later and talk about it.
And one more thing.
Oh, yes?
My poor little kitty cat. Please give him his breakfast for me.
So, his evil curse still apparently unbroken. So Segi-san found himself once again the prime suspect in a case of murder. Thanks to the incriminating deduction of the great detective, and of me.
My dear fellow, that honor belongs to you.
This might be near the end of the stream, I think.
Well, at least that means Inspector Gregson is no longer here. He can examine the crime scene in more detail now. Yes, that's right. And of course... What? Have you forgotten what the inspector mentioned before? It was the landlord, Mr. Garadeb, who discovered Mr. Shamspeare. Ah, Mr. John Garadeb, yes. I expect we could find him in his sitting room on the top floor as usual. Right, we must remember to go and talk to him later then.
Yeah, okay. There is like the tiniest bit of retcon then. Because if you remember in the 5th case, when we say hold it to Mr. Garadeb, he's like,
Thanks for that, by the way. Well, I think, thanks for that, by the way.
when we're talking about his wife. Yeah, he's actually already had a chance to speak to us before that. Unless he was just repeating himself. For the Queen, well, in the court's presence.
This is some sort of makeshift stage, I think, isn't it? There's the audience sit, though, for the 90s Shakespeare performances. actors aspiring to the great stage must practice their art, Mr. Naruto, with or without an audience. In fact, on a related note, perhaps you should set up a mock bench for the defense in your office.
What?
Then you could practice your art every single day.
I'll think about it, if you promise to don a beard and play the role of the judge.
Well, if that would help you achieve your goal.
This I have to see. Light. This is a gas wall light, isn't it? It must be connected to a gas pipe in the wall.
Gas lights, a gas stove, London really is a city of gas.
Now that I think about it, Mr. and Mrs. Garrett had an open fire on the top floor, didn't they?
Oh yes, you're right. I don't recall seeing a gas stove up there.
Well, I much prefer a real fire anyway. It's so much cozier. And here we have another disproportionately large machine. Looks like a meter of some kind. Gas meter?
Ah, this is a gas meter, I think. It seems that in this district, residents pay for gas as they use it with coins.
Ah, I see. Yes, now that you've pointed it out. Some old buildings still have these things, don't they? I can see that there's a slot here that looks like it would take a coin. So you mean, if you put a coin in here...
That's right. That would buy you about 2 hours of gas for lights and heating.
So if you're a poor person with no money, you'd have to sleep in the freezing cold?
Yes. Or if you're a scatterbrain with no change because you forgot to exchange your money at the bank.
Thank goodness there's no meter in our office.
There's not much on these shelves, is there? Just this wine glass and bottle. And both of them are cracked.
Yes, not much use, are they? What's the matter?
Oh, I was just reminded of the Reaper, that's all.
Prosecutor Lord Van Sykes?
Yes, he's so reckless with his wine glasses. I was thinking it's a waste, and that he should donate some to the needy.
You can suggest it next time we meet. Look at these extravagant bright costumes. Somehow they look out of place in this room with its grim, shady goings-on.
This one looks like a king's attire.
A king? I've always dreamt of being a king.
Oh, I think you'd be more suited to a feudal lord. A daimyo or such like.
With a Shonmage top knot. Every Japanese man wishes he had a Shonmage.
Oh, you'd look so wonderful with one, and you'd already have a sword.
Can you imagine what would happen if I walked around the streets of London with a Shonmage and a sword?
As we've seen from the outside, the window is completely bricked up. A vestige of the former window tax that Britons had to pay.
Strange things they used to tax in Great Britain. I mean, making people pay for the number of windows they had in the property. It's extraordinary.
It's heartbreaking to think of the poor having to block up their windows just to avoid an unaffordable tax.
What the fuck were the policymakers actually thinking? Like, I get it, right? Like, oh, bigger properties have more windows, we want to tax bigger properties more because they're bigger, so let's have a window tax. But, come on, why windows? Why not door taxes, or room taxes, or bedroom taxes, which still exist? You know, it's like, why windows?
Oh! What is it, Mr. Sato? If you look closely, a number of the bricks are loose.
Important. Very important. We saw the green things outside.
Oh yes, it looks as though an amateur has broken out a few of them just here. Was it Mr. Shamspear who did it, I wonder? Being the lodger renting this room. Ah, look at this, Mr. Naruhodo. On the outside, there's a little ledge. And there's something on it.
What? Outside?
It's so cold outside. You can feel it through this gap.
It did snow all last night. It would be cold. More importantly, what is it on the ledge out there? What are those snow-covered lumps?
It's more bars of soap.
Why? Soap? What are bars of soap doing lined up on a ledge outside the window?
I have no idea. The pair of them look rather charming like that.
Still, that's very strange, isn't it? Bars of soap lined up outside the window. I think perhaps we should take one. Ah, two after all.
Oh dear, I suppose we could. Oh, what's this? Look here at this soap. Ah, you see, in the middle there, there's a patch that's a different color. It's sort of transparent, but
some sort of fancy design, I suppose. Only in Great Britain. Yeah, we do have those on our bars of soap sometimes.
It looks like the Hinomaru flag of Japan, doesn't it? How wonderful! It's probably a very expensive brand.
Expensive? What's it doing in this ramshackle old room? Cheap bar of soap. Right, before we do the body, let's check out outside. Oh, I see something.
What's this?
It looks like part of an envelope, I think.
Yes, I think you may be right. Perhaps it was torn off when the letter was opened.
That's significant?
Well, it's a little out of place, perhaps. When you look around the room, there's no sign of a letter or the rest of the envelope intact, is there?
Ah, she's right.
And yet, here we have the torn off end of an envelope. It strikes me as unusual.
I agree. We'd better take this just in case. Oh, I can't wait for those. There's going to be, like, there'll be the detention center scene. But then there's going to be a scene where, like, somebody's like, oh, Mr. Natsume committed another crime, and there's going to be the normal bit of, like, no, not again. He was found not guilty of the first one, or something. You know. I feel like that happens every time there's a defendant who is a defendant multiple times. The torn off end of the envelope. Cabalas Road, Meashorn Street.
This part is a different color. It's an exquisite design, isn't it?
Just the British to turn a boring bar of soap into something special.
I quite like it. It reminds me of the Hinomaru design of the Japanese flag. I expect this is rather expensive soap.
Doesn't seem likely, given who it belongs to. Why is it even there, though? And where is the thing from the middle of the bar of soap that we were looking at? Yeah, you can see it's an envelope. Whoever opened this envelope didn't bother with the letter opener or scissors, did they?
Yes, whoever opened it was clearly someone with an unrefined temperament. And judging from the angle of the rip here, of course, the person in question must have been right-handed.
Sato? I think
perhaps someone to reading too much of the adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
You can never read too much of it, Mr. Naruhodo. Never.
It was a very Sherlockian production, wasn't it? We can see the officer. That's good attention to detail that the artist bothered to put it there, because it obviously wasn't there in the first game. First of February, local prison, cell 9.
Balloting.
The Gary Group's boom. Oh, he's tidied the whole thing up, minus the burns.
Here we are again, the eccentric landlord's eccentric top floor abode.
Here because Mr. Garrett is the one who discovered the incident this morning, don't forget.
Oh, yo chaps, I balloting.
Yes, good morning, sir.
Thank you for your cooperation in court yesterday. Balloting.
It was quite a trial. As much for Mr. Garrett as anyone, really.
Came straight back here after all that business at the Bailey yesterday. Didn't expect to wake up to more balling nonsense this morning.
I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us exactly what happened, Mr. Garrett.
Yes, I suppose you'd like to know all about that dead loss of an actor chap in the ground floor room.
Those are exactly Inspector Gregson's words, weren't they? His dressing gown is still a mess. Also, he was called into court wearing his bloody dressing gown. That's hilarious. His bruises healed. Dum ding ding dum ding ding dum ding ding. Garrett, could I show you this?
Been quite a couple of days, as you can imagine. Oh, I'm afraid I'm rather tired. I haven't really got the energy in the old eyeballs, to be honest with you.
Some other time then. Lives of the great capitals of citizen. Go. Okay.
Oh, a copy of our Ants magazine. Adventures of Sherlock Holmes is being read all over London. Isn't it wonderful?
Well, I think naturally one asks oneself if such a singular detective could really exist. Really exist. But having met the chap, it's undeniable. He is most certainly singular. Singularly dangerous. Well, I think that's genuine public opinion for you, Mr. Sato. Perhaps it should be reflected in the stories.
Make no mistake, Mr. Naruhodo. I intend to snuff out all the sort of public opinion we just heard, obviously. Personally, I'm starting to see where Mr. Sholmes' untainted reputation comes from now. There's a single apron drying on that enormous cannon-shaped clothes horse, look. No, Mr. Naruhodo, that's a real cannon. Knew that, I was just testing you.
Piece of history, that is. Seen plenty of action on the battlefield, I can tell you. Now the old girl and I are just enjoying the peace and quiet of retirement together. And of course, she'd come in handy if the enemy decided to launch an attack again.
Is there a war going on that I didn't know about? Huh. Yeah, the attitude to war these days must have been very different. This is before the Great War, so... But war was just kind of like, oh yeah, there's a war somewhere, big surprise. That's your military uniform, isn't it, Mr. Gardeb?
Well, ceremonial garb, yes. Been hanging on the wall ever since my retirement bash. Not in active service now, you know. Doesn't mean much to me anymore. You could have the old thing if you wanted it.
Ah. Whoa, lots of people. Well, it might suit Lord Van Zykes, perhaps. An overly ostentatious outfit like this could be just what he needs. Very tactful, Mr. Sato. Very tactful indeed. Ah yes, those enormous mortar shells. It's quite something seeing them up close, isn't it? Didn't you say something about firing them into the barracks, Mr. Gardeb?
Oh, you remember, don't ya? Just a little mishap that occurred during training one day, balloting. What are you doing, firing on your own men? The captain bellowed at me.
I'm not surprised. A little mishap doesn't really do it justice, does it?
Well, one has these little incidents when one's a hot-headed young private.
Perhaps I should put some evidence that resulted from one of my little mishaps on display. Oh, does the Grey Lawyer, like the Grey Detective, want to exhibit some trophies of his finest moments? You look very dashing in your uniform here, Mr. Gardem.
Oh, that old portrait, eh? Drawn by an art student who used to rent the room downstairs.
Oh, you look so wonderfully young and courageous and strong.
Yes, well, the chap presented it to me one day and asked if I'd let him off the month's rent in return.
Oh, I see. So you did, presumably?
Oh, Ballywell did not.
Oh!
Portrait is a portrait, but rent is rent, eh?
Yet it's still there, proudly on the wall. Good to see Mr. Garredham's Medal of Honor still proudly displayed on the wall. inscription reads, "For distinguished participation," if you remember. I like how this is sort of... I think Shutakumi is taking the mick at the fact that, like, millennials and zoomers are known for participation medals, but here we are in the 1900s and there's one right there. Yes, I remember, because I remember thinking even I might stand a chance of picking up honours like that.
Wouldn't know it to the look of me now, perhaps, but I had my devil-may-care days, you know.
Devil may care? What did you get up to?
Well, all in the past now, of course, and best left there.
It's not, I want to know now. Yeah, that's a typical Brit thing to do. Allude to a story and then don't tell it. We know what that screen is hiding now. The aftermath of the fiery altercation the other day.
Don't suppose I'll be able to clear up that mess for some time now.
Oh dear, this must be a very difficult situation for you.
I'll say, people talk about twists of fate and whatnot. But this was a twist and a half. Rotten show all around.
It's clearly struggling with everything that's happened. An impressive collection of cakes on that fancy silver cake stand there. I feel sure that it was full of cakes when we first investigated in here as well.
Yes, quite right. Haven't touched it since. Haven't done much at all really since it all happened. Time's rather stood still for me, you know.
Oh. Time stood still? Now that's an interesting phrase. Might be able to use that excuse when I'm next supposed to be tidying the office. You could just tidy up, Mr. Naruhodo. Look at the view over the wintry East End from up here. An oppressively grey scene. There's really nothing comparable in Japan. Down below, Briar Road, partly blanketed in the snow. The pavement where poor Miss Green was struck in the back by that knife. Thinking about it, this is the only room in the building which actually has a window to the outside world. Sometimes, Great Britain really does seem like a strange land, doesn't it? I suppose all foreign cultures seem strange at first. Imagine how an Englishman would feel on arriving in Japan and seeing people with a chômage topknot. Well, that's a good point. These shells look like they've been completely torn apart by a wild beast.
Reminds me of the bell of my wind, don't you know? Don't you know?
Ah, the experiences of a seasoned veteran.
The enemy had it surrounded on all sides. We really thought we were done for, the whole ballet company. We were taking a real pounding from their cannons, so all we could do was run for our lives.
Oh, I thought that story was going in a different direction, actually.
Well, the old experience taught me one thing, I can tell you. When you're done for, you're really done for.
Ugh, that's not what a lawyer who often finds himself under fire wants to do. Brilliant pessimism. Must have been a real shock for you this morning. I hear that you discovered what had happened.
Oh, well, that hopeless actor chap rises at 5 o'clock sharp every morning without fail. But at 5:30 this morning, he still hadn't lit the gas. So I went down and knocked his door, but no bally answer.
And that's when you broke into his room by kicking down the door.
Well, I called on that rum-looking Japanese chap to do the grunt work, doors.
Wasn't it a little premature to kick the door down? Frank could have just overslept by half an hour. That's very true, Mr. Naruhodo. 30 minutes, oversleeping warranted such behavior. I'd have to kick your door down every morning.
Well, you know, better to be safe than sorry and all that.
Vicious. Is it just me, or is he avoiding our gaze now all of a sudden? Except that it was a sorry situation that you found on the far side of the door. The victim's name is Mr. Shamspeare, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, William Shamspeare took the ground floor room 3 months ago now.
And how would you describe him?
In a word, destitute.
Destitute?
Well, let's face it, the only redeeming feature of that room is the cheap rent. Anyone wanting to live in a place like that is either broke or has a bally screw loose.
So hard to choose which category Soseki-san would fall into. Naruhodo, that's a little rude.
He was doing research as well.
Research into what?
Shakespeare, of course, Shakespeare. Read a few plays of the old bard myself, you know. Romeo and Hamlet and all that.
Yes, William Shakespeare is England's most highly regarded classical playwright and author. He's known as Sao in Japanese, and as you know, many of his works have already been translated. Incredible that Shakespeare was shortened to Sao, though. Someone was too heavy-handed there. There were lots of costumes in the victim's room, actually, weren't there? Of course, Mr. Natsume is a scholar of English and literature as well. Imagine he and Mr. Shamspeare would have had much in common. Shakespeare interpretation disagreement leads to shocking murder. So if it's not that. Mr. Naruhodo, really? How rude! After Mr. Natsume's trial yesterday, you came straight back here, I believe, didn't you? Did you notice anything strange between then and this morning?
Well, now, must have been about 6 in the evening by the time I got home. The snow was coming down rather heavily, as I remember, and it was completely dark already. That veiled actor chap was out at the time.
Mr. Garrett had noticed there was no light from his room or something, I suppose.
Couldn't summon the energy for anything much, so I just sat in front of the fire up here. It was after 8 before Shamspeare got back, and the chat was up until past 1 in the morning, I'll have you know.
Yeah, they are very nosy, aren't they? Typical.
Suppose he met his end sometime after that. I was asleep by then, so I'm rather in the dark there.
Well, thank you. That was very illuminating. Is everything all right, Miss Usato? Well, I was just thinking that is a little strange, that's all. Gareb, we're up here in your room all evening, if I've understood correctly.
Not a big fan of stairs, not with the old blasted leg.
Then, how is it that you seem to know? Precise movements of your tenant on the ground floor, I mean.
Oh!
Very good point. I can't imagine that you could hear noises from the ground floor all the way up here. Old man like to spy on his tenants, is that it?
Oh, I say, I know what you're thinking. It's a bally outrage. I'm ex-military, don't you know? I don't go around spying on my tenants. Why would I?
And how did you know, Mr. Garrett?
It's the gas woman. The gas tells me everything.
The gas?
What on earth do you mean, sir? How can the gas tell you anything, let alone everything? Let alone everything? Well, as you're probably aware, the gas is supplied to the building by pipes.
Yes, I'd more or less worked that out.
Every room in the building is connected by a single pipe to the gas main outside. And the gas company supplies gas to properties via the main.
Yes, I understand that too.
Let me see if I can explain. Let's say I was to light the gas lamps up here. What do you suppose would happen?
Well, obviously the room would get brighter.
Exactly, but at the same time, the lights in all the other rooms of the house dim for a moment.
What? They dim? Why?
Perhaps it's because when you light a gas lamp, it briefly uses more gas than usual. And reduces the amount of gas in the pipe from other lamps that are connected to it. That might explain why the other lamps dim momentarily, mightn't it?
Yes, of course, because everything's connected to a single supply pipe.
That's supposed to happen though. It sounds rather undesirable.
Jolly good point. Fact is, the gas company's pipes in these parts are pretty hopeless, long worn out, and barely got any gas in them to start with. Opposite's also true, of course. Extinguish the lamps up here and they'll glow brighter in the rest of the house.
Ah, right, I see. So by watching the flickering of the lamps in one room, you can determine what's happening elsewhere.
Yeah, you've got it.
Oh, of course, because when people come back home in the evening, before they go to sleep at night, what they're guaranteed to do is either light or put out their lamps and fires.
Clever.
In point of fact, the room on the ground floor and the one above it uses slightly different amounts of gas. By watching the lights in here closely, I can work out almost exactly what's going on in the old house.
Gosh, that's fascinating, Mr. Garridev. Absolutely fascinating.
Oh well, nothing to it really.
I can't really see that it's going to help us with the case either. What I'd like to know is why Mr. Garrett is so interested in what his tenants are up to in the first place. I feel like there's more to it than the idle curiosity. Ah, fuck.
Oh, the poor man, so young to die. Do you suppose it was a very painful death, being poisoned as he was?
I don't know. What we can do now is hope to be born into a better life.
Yes, I suppose you're right. I wonder. Do you think that putting our hands together in a Japanese prayer will help a British soul?
Sorry?
I mean, sure, I had a reference at the ready for just such an occasion as this, actually. This book is entitled The Beginner's Guide to Praying for the Departed, the British Way. just reread it now. One moment. There's quite a spine on that book, isn't there? That's it. I guess now the prison's open. And I'll leave it there, I think. Oh. Okay, there's something we've missed there. How did I miss something? Ah, the candle. He didn't need to activate the gas lamp because he has this fucking candle. The lights are going to be so important to this trial. I can't see what I need to do now. So lost. I'm gonna get past this roadblock so that we can talk to Lion, me, and then I'll call it a night. Missing. I'm so dumb, I swear I tried this. Ah, one of those teacups that Mr. Shamspeare and his guest were drank from last night. Don't go drinking from them, Mr. Naruhodo. There's bitter poison inside. Planning on drinking any, don't worry. Anyway, the cups are both empty. That's true. So, one was Mr. Shamspear's. The other must be the cup that Mr. Natsume was drinking from.
So Segi-san wasn't poisoned, of course. Perhaps we should take these so we can examine them in more detail later.
Looks like you're having a good snoop round, mate.
Inspector Gregson, you back so soon?
After I threw that little Japanese fella in the clique, I went and reported this to the investigation division. In 5 minutes' time, this place will be cordoned off by the yard.
Oh, I see. Well, we'd better be leaving then.
Poor Mr. Natsume must be feeling very low, being back in his cell again so soon.
What? Should probably go and... What the fuck? What the fuck? That's surprising. What the fuck? Well, of course nobody would expect that. That's so dumb. That's so dumb. I love it. What the
What's wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? Ah. Yeah. Out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player. That struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. Now, how soundeth the next part?
It is a tale told by an idiot, sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Indeed, oh, happy day.
What?
Walking Dead! This is the most insane thing this series has ever seen.
The fellow isn't dead at all.
What was that nonsense he was saying, though?
I think, yes, it was from William Shakespeare's Macbeth. A soliloquy from Act 5, Scene 5.
What are you? You just finished your English literature at GCSE? Shakespeare? This is ridiculous. So it was that the victim, Mr. William Shakespeare, came back to life. The man had indeed been poisoned. It transpired that it hadn't killed him. He was taken by emergency carriage to a nearby hospital for treatment. And Inspector Gregson evicted us from the scene of the crime. Whatever that now was. Right, I'm leaving it here. Ah. I want to see what's the title screen. Oh, Briar Road, it's very nice. Ah. Bum, 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 bum.